Welcome to April. I can't believe it's already April. April is a really pivotal month in the garden, no matter where you are. It's spring, the weather is warming up, the worst weather is behind us, the days are lengthening, and it just feels different. In this video, I'm going to give you 7 crops that you can direct sow right now in the garden. Now, depending on where you are, they might be fine on their own, or they might need a little protection for a couple of weeks, but I'll show you how to do that. And anyway, protecting them is way easier than having to set up a grow station inside with a grow light and all of that, and then managing that for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Let me know in the comments where you're from, what your last frost date is. If you don't know your last frost date, just Google last frost date and your zip code or your area. All right, let's start with a couple of cool season crops. Now, there are those of us who are in climates where it's now going to get too warm, too fast to start long growing cold season crops. However, if you are in a cooler climate where you have cold winters and it takes a while for your weather to warm up, then this is the time to plant brassicas. Now, a lot of the brassicas, like I said, they take a long time to grow, at least 3 months, and they don't like weather over 75 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 Celsius. For an extended period of time. So if that is what you've got coming up, like I do, it's best to plant long-growing brassicas like cauliflower, broccoli, and cabbage in the fall. But for those of you in the right climate, right now is the time. Now, if you're somewhere in between, you can shave off about a month of time by buying garden center transplants and not sowing the seeds directly in the garden. That way they'll be ready for you in June, so if your weather doesn't get too warm before June, you should be just fine. Cool season greens can be sowed outdoors directly right now by almost anyone. They're frost hardy, so if you still have a little frost, they're not going to need to be protected. You'll want to go with leaf lettuces if you're in an area that warms up like in June, where it's over 75 degrees, 24 Celsius, because lettuces especially will bolt at that time and you won't get any harvest out of them. And bolting just means they go to seed, so they shoot up a tall stalk really quick and flower. Once they do that, the lettuce tends to get tougher and more bitter, and so in effect, it's done. But leaf lettuce, they will be ready to harvest in as little as a month, and you can just keep picking off the outer leaves as they continue to grow and mature and have an extended season, basically until they bolt. You'll be able to harvest from a month from now all the way up until it gets too warm. Spinach is kind of the same thing, and it does take a little bit longer to grow than lettuce does to get to a mature stage. And when that weather starts warming up, spinach is just not going to do well. One thing that can extend your season if weather starts to warm up a little bit before you expect it to is to put a floating row cover or fleece, something to shade those plants in the heat of the day, and that's going to extend that season for them a little bit longer. Peas can be started right now from seed. Those of you who have a little bit longer, cooler weather ahead of you can do that right now. For gardeners like me who have mild winters and our weather starts to heat up around May, June, we plant those in the fall or winter and they grow through the winter. But if you love peas, nothing is stopping you from giving them a try right now. The worst case scenario is you may get a few peas, but you'll still get pea shoots. And that's basically the tender tips of the stems that have the flower buds and a little tendril. Just snip those off. They're great by themselves or in salads, and they taste like peas. The best thing to do for peas is to make sure, especially if the weather's warming up, that they get plenty of water. If they don't, the bottoms tend to dry up, and it actually keeps the water from then going through the bottom of the stem up into the rest of the plant. So don't let them dry out. Root veggies like beets, carrots, radish can be sown directly by just about anyone right now. They're frost tolerant and can handle more heat. So as summer starts to heat up, they're going to be just fine. My favorite beet variety is Bull's Blood. And with carrots, there's just a ton to choose from. I choose the shorter or rounder ones because my raised beds are shorter. I don't grow a lot of radishes because I'm not a huge fan, so I really can't give you any advice on varieties to grow. They do germinate best in cooler weather, so if you get them germinated before the weather heats up, they'll still grow well for you. Now let's get into the warm season crops. Just about everyone can plant those right now in April. There are some of you where if you're not past your last frost date, you might need to cover them with fleece, floating row covers, something like that, just to maintain a little more warmth at night. But if you're out of your frost period, it's go time. There are some that like to grow in warmer weather, but they don't need warm weather to germinate, and corn would be one of those. When you're growing corn, you want to plant them in groups instead of a long row. Corn is wind pollinated, so the tassels at the top of the plant produce the pollen that blows onto the corn silks. In a grid or group, whichever way the wind is blowing, that pollen reaches some tassels. If you're in a straight line going this way and the wind is blowing this way, it's just going to blow that pollen onto whatever crop you have over there. Pumpkins, squashes, and cucumbers can all be planted right now, direct sown right into the garden. So as long as you're past your last frost date or give them a little protection right now, go ahead with those. I'm going to grow even more pumpkins this year because there are several tasty varieties that can be stored for a long time and go a long way toward self-sufficiency. They're great for feeding you in the winter when there's not much else growing, and as I found out this year, Daisy absolutely loves them. So I'm going to be growing extra just for her. Sweet potato slips can be planted right now. Unless you're in a really warm zone with a long growing season, you're going to need to purchase the slips from an online nursery. You don't have time to start the slips yourself, unfortunately, at this time. But if you get slips into the ground right away, you'll have plenty of time to get yourself some sweet potatoes in the fall. And by the way, slips are just sprouts that have been rooted. And sweet potatoes are my favorite thing probably ever to grow here on our homestead. We got a huge harvest last year. In fact, we've still got some that we just used some for Easter. So get them in the ground now, and by this fall, they can be part of your Thanksgiving feast. Green beans are another great one to start right now after your last frost date or with a tiny bit of protection until that point. In fact, I just included these in last Sunday's Self-Sufficient Sunday video, pinto beans in particular. In fact, they came in first place for the most calorically dense, the most nutrient dense, with the most protein. And of course, they're able to be dried for years. Make sure you're subscribed because we just started up Self-Sufficient Sunday again. And in these crazy times with who knows what's happening, it's best to be even a little self-sufficient. We're going to show you how to do that every week on Sunday. This coming Sunday, we're going to show you how to be more self-sufficient, even with the smallest garden. So make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell. Now you might be in a special category of those who have nighttime temperatures right now of 55 degrees Fahrenheit or above, or 55 to 65, let's say. And if that's the case, we're not there yet, but you can start sowing tomatoes and eggplant. If you're in even more special category and you have temperatures over 65 degrees at nighttime, you can start the real heat lovers like melons, peppers, and okra. If you aren't in that situation and you don't want to set up a grow room with a grow light, click on this video right here. I'll show you how to make a simple, easy cold frame to get your seeds jump started even outdoors, even before your last frost date. I'll see you next time.